Hi guys, it's Dylan from Bijou Diamond Jewellery in London with another watch video, and today we're taking a look at a super special watch from Patek Philippe, which is the 5905P. As with all my reviews, let's go back in time now and take a look at the history of this watch. I'm not going to look too in detail at the history of this 5905, but I'll look at a couple watches that really influenced the design and function of this piece. Patek Philippe has been creating chronographs, perpetual calendars, amazing complicated wristwatches since the 1920s, so almost 100 years ago they've been creating those watches. And they've also been creating many watches with complications combined, so several complications in one watch. This one is obviously featuring two complications, the annual calendar and the flyback chronograph. We're going to skip on ahead though and not look at so many older watches that influenced this piece, and we're going to skip on to 1996, which is when Patek Philippe realized that the perpetual calendar, which was one of their most popular complications, was out of price reach for most people. It was a very expensive complication due to its complexity. They introduced an option in 1996, a new complication, a new movement they invented called the annual calendar. And the annual calendar was, as it's in its name, a watch that you adjust the movement every year, once a year. And that's essentially just to account for a leap year. The annual calendar was a great success in 1996. And a few other models stemmed from it, the 5146 later on, 5035, and then eventually 5205, which we'll come on to in a second. 10 years later on is when the next kind of interesting iteration that relates to this watch that we're looking at today came out, and that was the 5960. The 5960 was a beautiful watch that was in fact a very special one for Patek Philippe, because it was the first ever chronograph or automatic chronograph that Patek had ever produced with an in-house chronograph movement. So that was a really special piece, and it was really popular and still is to this day one of the most popular watches. Even though it's been discontinued, it's deemed as a little bit of a collector's piece. There are a few variations of this watch that are really, really nice looking. In fact, the one still remains in the collection now. In 2015, so 9 years later on, we saw the release of this watch that we're looking at today, which is the 5905, and they first released that in the platinum variations. The 5905 first released black and blue dial, beautiful, beautiful watch, featuring an annual calendar and a flyback chronograph, same as the 5960, but this time it was in a slightly larger case size. It took on the design hues of the 5205, which was released in 2010, which is one of Patek Philippe's most popular models and easily one of the most requested watches from us, or with us, for Pateks in terms of their dress collection pieces. A beautiful, beautiful watch that features these three aperture windows at the top of the watch, top of the dial, to tell your date, day and month. The 5905P, or 5905 in general, took its inspiration from both the 5960, the one we just discussed then, and also the 5205, the annual calendar. And it combined those two references. It took the 59 from the 5960 and the 05 from the 5205 to make the 5905. It's a super special watch, like I said, combining two amazing complications, which are arguably Patek Philippe's most popular complications, the chronograph and the annual calendar. So that concludes kind of the basic history on this watch. Let's take a look at the features now, and starting as always with the clasp. The clasp on this watch is super, super simple. It's literally just their standard pin buckle clasp. You can actually get this watch with the optional deployant clasp, but this one, as standard as most watches in the Patek collection, come on the pin buckle. Super beautiful, very angular, kind of interesting looking, nothing spectacular though. It's literally just a pin buckle in full polished platinum. Yeah, nicely machined, not so much to say about that. The strap on this watch, on this particular black dial variation, is a matte black alligator strap that is just beautifully, beautifully crafted. Real super luxurious feeling, just goes with the whole amazing feel that this watch has, incredibly high-end feel. They do tend to last quite a long time, their straps as well, which other brands don't. Moving on now to our movement, and we're going to go to the case back. We've got a clear crystal case back, or clear sapphire crystal case back. Amazing looking movement inside that, obviously featuring two different specific complications, our annual calendar and our flyback chronograph, so it's a really complex movement, but it looks absolutely stunning through the rear case back. And we've got that amazing 21 karat gold rotor, which is quite noisy, which I love as well. You can really hear it winding when it's on your wrist, as with most Patek Philippe's in fact, so which I really enjoy about them, the fact that they are quite noisy rotors. Again, the movement finished to the most exquisite high-end level. I mean, we wouldn't expect anything less from Patek Philippe. They always produce the most beautiful movements, and we can obviously see the Patek Philippe seal on the movement as well, which basically just says to its owner that this movement has been finished to the highest standard. No one really comes close to this level. Every screw is polished, everything is handcrafted inside where it can be, and everything is assembled by hand as well. It is truly exquisite, ultra high-end watchmaking at its best. Moving on now to the case, we've got a beautiful platinum case on this watch in full polished finish. The case is, as always with Patek, sculpturally beautiful. I love the swooping lugs, it's just so elegant. I love the scooped out kind of lug sides or sides of the watch around the pushers and the crown. I love how that's kind of sculpturally scooped out. It makes it look so interesting. It kind of reminds me of the 5205 and some other watches in the collection that are just really elegant, but when you look slightly deeper, there's some more contemporary features inside that watch or inside the actual casing itself. We've got the beautiful bezel on this watch as well, also of course in polished finish, which is like convex style, and it kind of angles up into the glass. It's so stunning. The case itself is 42mm in width or diameter, sorry. So it is slightly larger than the 5960, which has a 40.5mm to be exact, case size. So it does feel slightly larger than that watch, but not too much so. It doesn't feel like a 42mm watch on my wrist compared to something like an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore. It definitely doesn't feel quite so large. It sits really nicely on the wrist, and I think that's partly thanks to the additional depth that they've put on this watch. The deeper depth helps to kind of balance that a little bit, which is really nice. The dial on this watch is a stunning sunburst dial. It's said to be a black grey dial. You can see the grey slightly in certain light, but I would really say that this is a black dial. It is stunning. I love the sunburst effect. I think it's really nice they put that on this watch. I think it also would have suited a black lacquer style dial, which would have looked beautiful as well. But this definitely is a stunning combination. The sunburst just gives it that life and kind of zing that a lacquer dial lacks in some respect. It is super legible as well, because you've got those platinum hands and the lume, and also the white print on that black dial, so it really lifts that out and is super easy to read, which is good. And of course our month, our day and our date all have that white writing as well. Something I really love about this watch is the dial and how intricate the markers and the hands are, and all the different accents on the dial. The intricacy of those actual index markers create this kind of sheen and shimmer off the index markers. They kind of twinkle, which is so beautiful to look at, and it gives this watch such life, which actually you don't get so much on many Patek Philippe watches like this that are dressy, that don't have diamonds or not in a precious metal. This is obviously an extremely understated watch, so to see these kind of more beautiful accents, this intricate detail, actually gives it much more life and sparkle more life and sparkle than you'd actually expect from a watch like this. Moving on to the functions now, we've got obviously an annual calendar and also a flyback chronograph in this watch. The annual calendar is read or displayed very similar to the 5205, with those 3 apertures at the top of the watch. Very easy to read, very easy to use as well. And I really like that way of displaying the annual calendar. I don't like it so much when it's on subdials. I think this looks much easier to read and much cleaner. The chronograph is displayed in a 60-minute chronograph down at 6 o'clock in that little small subdial. You can see your chronograph seconds with your main seconds hand. That actually is not a seconds hand for the actual time movement or time and date movement. It's actually just specifically for the chronograph. So it will remain at 12 o'clock stationary when you have the chronograph not running. So yeah, really nice chronograph, very simple. Obviously it doesn't feature chronograph hours, but how many people are actually using chronographs to measure hours? Most of the time you're using it to measure seconds. And obviously this being a flyback chronograph as well means that you don't need to press the reset and start button like you do on a standard chronograph. Also on this dial we've got a small day and night function at 6 o'clock, which just helps you when setting the watch and also understanding what the time is. Just a little extra aid. Let's look at how to set the watch as well. So we'll start with the annual calendar function. It's same as the 5205. We've got 3 little dimples on the left hand side of the watch, opposite side of the crown, that you use with or in conjunction with the Patek Philippe pusher that comes in the box, and you depress in those little dimples and it helps to change the date, day and month. So the bottom one does your month, your middle one does your day, and the top one does your date. In terms of how to use the chronograph, again, like I said, it's a flyback chronograph, meaning that you don't have to start and stop the chronograph before you press the reset button. This watch is designed so that you can just literally fly back that chronograph as it's moving around and as it's counting, which was more useful when you're measuring things like cars or people running or whatever you might be measuring with your chronograph. To be able to just straight away be able to reset the chronograph is more useful. That's pretty common on Patek Philippe watches to find a flyback feature, for example the 5980. So that concludes the features of this watch. Let's move on to now whether or not I would own this piece. I would definitely own this watch. It is a stunning piece. It's incredibly understated. I'd say it's one of the most understated watches in the Patek Philippe collection. Some would not like that and some would. There's kind of a specific audience, which I'll come on to in a second, really, that is after this watch. I mean, I love the fact that you just don't know how much this watch is worth. I mean, this watch really is worth several Daytonas or steel Daytonas, and actually you would never be able to tell. And most people that see this watch in the street would have no clue as to what it is, because it's not shouting out with diamonds or precious metal or a big bracelet. It's far more expensive than most of those watches that are like that, with the diamonds and the bracelets and the gold. But it's just really, really beautifully subtle. And this black kind of platinum combination is even more subtle, I'd say, and understated than the blue and any other watches in this 5905 collection. I love the life on this dial. Like I said, those index markers and those hands really bring it to life and give it that zing and sparkle with that sunburst as well. Just creates a real special feel to this piece. Personally, I prefer the smaller size of the 5960, the predecessor to this watch, really. But I think this watch doesn't look too big on my wrist. The 5905 still has beautifully proportioned case and lugs and everything that makes it sit really nicely on a wrist. I would definitely own it. I think, as I said, it's very, very understated. It's not, because of its extreme expense, not a watch for the masses at all. You're not getting a lot of bang for your buck here. And for that reason, this watch is really for those that truly appreciate watchmaking and very high-end timepieces like this piece. This, for me, is far more of a Patek Philippe image and brand image than any Nautilus could ever be, any Aquanaut could ever be. This, for me, truly is Patek Philippe. This is what Patek Philippe has been enjoying creating for almost 200 years now. This, for me, really is the essence of Patek. And the fact it's this understated makes it even more so. Thanks guys for watching. Let us know in the comments what you think of this Patek Philippe 5905P. Would you own this watch, or do you own the blue dial or another variation? Perhaps you'd own the 5960. And as always, if you're interested in this watch or any other watch in the Patek Philippe collection, then don't hesitate to contact us. Our details are in the description or at the end of the video. It'd be a pleasure to help you.